they decided to come along too, and everybody was really supportive. They planned everything ahead on TripAdvisor. Sam wanted to go to Florida to work on his tan, but in the end they decided to go to this great place called Mountain Dune because there was a special for frequent flyer miles. The trip went so smoothly they couldn't believe it. At one point they weren't sure which way to turn, and they hired a wonderful guy named Smeagol, who was completely trustworthy and just precious. When they arrived, they took a look around and said, "Wow, great trip, guys." They gave each other high fives and said, "Let's take a picture and post this on Instagram. And then let's go home." People loved that story so much that they made 3 movies about it. The truth is that if Frodo avoids conflict, he's really just a hobbit hitchhiker on a long vacation. I remember a specific time in my life when I thought about avoiding conflict, and for us it took about 16 months to get our company started in every story. And my best friend and I, Pete, we decided about 8 months into it, it was the most depressing times of our lives, to take a cross-country road trip and visit other models of what we thought we wanted to start. We were on the second day of the trip in Pete's car, and the transmission blew out, and the car became worthless. I can actually remember the mechanic kind of opening up the hood and just going, "Oh, that's the smell of death." So Pete and I had a couple of options. We didn't know what to do. We were 23 and we didn't have any money. And one option was just to buy a bus ticket and go home. And the truth is that if we had done that, a lot of people would have been happy. They would have said, "You guys tried your best. Maybe some other time." We would have gotten normal jobs and done normal things, and it would have been fine. But the reality is that we realized that if we decided to buy a bus ticket home, that we'd be setting a pattern for the rest of our lives where we would always buy bus tickets home. And so I made Pete buy a Ford Focus. So we're actually driving the car, and the salesman is getting a little frustrated because the CD player won't work, and he's worried he's going to lose his sale. And he ends up getting a screwdriver down into the CD player and finally pulls the CD out. And I'm not one of those people that really looks into signs a whole lot, but the CD actually had written on it, "God has a plan." And that was one of those times that I decided that we should probably listen to that. There's always going to be good reasons to avoid conflict. For you guys, it might be the fear of failure. One of the most freeing things that was ever said to me was one of my mentors said, "Derek, is it possible you'll make mistakes?" No, it's actually certain. The worries of the world is a good reason to avoid the conflict that's necessary to live your best story. Other people's approval will be a reason why you might consider avoiding conflict to live your best story. Chances are that if you want to live the story that's written for you, you're going to have to let some people down. Comfort and wealth will always be good reasons to avoid living your best story. It's not the right time will be a good reason to avoid living your best story. It's too late, it's too difficult, the list goes on and on. The reality is that if you choose to live a great story, you're going to face significant challenges. There will always be a reason to walk in a different direction. A lot of times, though, it's the size of the challenge that determines the size of the dream. The great philosopher Rocky put it like this: "It ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." Coach Wolford liked that one. The thing that's really interesting about conflict is when I reflect back on my own conflict, I know that if Pete and I hadn't kept going, there's no way that we would have made it as far as we had today. But the other side that's also just as true is that if we hadn't have gone through that conflict, we wouldn't have learned and been equipped with the characteristics that would be really important in our lives for us to also make it this far. Things like persistence and patience and courage. And that leads me to my third and final point. Great authors use conflict to make stories matter. A story is just when a character wants something so badly that they're willing to overcome any obstacle to get it. When they overcome obstacles, they teach us about things in life that really matter. One of the things that life will always try to impress on you is that what's going to matter is what you do. But I think that great stories show us that what people actually care about is who you are. I have no idea what Leonardo DiCaprio was in the movie The Titanic, but I know that because of who he was, he taught us about love. Through conflict, the story of Abraham Lincoln teaches us about patience and perseverance and hope and humility. Through conflict in Lord of the Rings, Frodo teaches us about courage and sacrifice. And he teaches what anybody can do, even if you're just a hobbit. I remember when I was a senior at Pinewood that Coach Edson really challenged me. And he said to me, Derek, eventually you're going to have to decide if you're going to live your life for yourself or if you're going to live it for other people. And so to you guys, the class of 2014, I would really challenge you with the same thing. It's going to have a big impact on how you live your story. If you choose to live for yourself, then when conflict comes into your life, it's really going to be a nuisance. It's going to get in the way. If people are involved and there are obstacles, you're just going to run them over. You might hurt them. If doing the right thing brings conflict into your life, you'll look for shortcuts and do the wrong thing. When you can't control things, it'll drive you crazy. And ultimately, the conflict that we all face that's unavoidable is death. The world's already full of people that are living like this, and it really doesn't need any more. The second option that you can choose is to live your best story, and to live the story that your author's written for you, and to live a story that benefits the lives of other people. And when you do that, your story will become an example. Conflict becomes a fuel for living a beautiful and meaningful story. When you face rejection and failure, you'll just use it as an opportunity to develop perseverance and patience. When you face fear, you'll develop courage. When you lose people that matter to you in your life, you'll learn how to love even more deeply. When you face financial difficulties, you'll develop gratitude. When you feel like it's too late to start living your best story, you'll realize that authors specialize in stories of redemption. When things seem too far away, you'll develop faith. I ultimately believe in Jesus because while most of life will give you plans to avoid conflict and to avoid death, he's the only one that says, let's just go ahead and conquer it. And when you're at the end of your life, people will look at your story and they'll just say, wow, that was an amazing story. And they'll learn from your life how to better live their own. So if you think back to what it was that you wanted to be when you were a child, chances are it has less to do with what it was than what those characteristics were that were involved. If you wanted to be a princess, it was probably because they were pure, because they were beautiful. And since my little sister's here, I'll say because they required that men treat them really well. If you wanted to be a fireman, chances are it had to do with courage and community service. When I think about what I was asked when I was a little kid, what I want to be when I grow up, I don't really think it had much to do with being a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. I think it had a lot to do with being very brave, and the desire to have courage, and the desire to bring justice into places where there aren't any, the desire to persevere and to love people around me, and to live my best story by helping others do the same. I think that I'll finally understand my character better when I meet my author face to face. And so the thing that I would leave you guys with is, what's the story your author wants to write through you, and what are you going to do about it? Thanks.